Hey all, so the next video, short and snappy video, is going to be still looking at getting this engine in and marking out the table, working out where the chassis is going to go. Thanks to all these people on my thank you list, and especially thanks, we've picked up a couple of extra people who are offering feedback and help. I had some great questions from this person. So I don't read names out, the reason being because I'm dyslexic. This thing where it's lots of letters with no spaces, I'm never too sure quite how to read them anyway, so excuse, don't think I'm being rude. Who from the questioning looks like has built a LoCost and has made some great suggestions from sort of experience of LoCost. Simon has posted quite a few times questions and help on Facebook, and John is one of the guys from the 7 Spot channel who has been sharing and liking and posting my stuff all over Facebook. So thank you to all of you. Massive thank you to Dave and Jean who have used the tip jar. So end of last one, you left me with this engine on the build table. So what I've started doing is just marking out a few lines on the build table at various distances out from the datum to try and work out. I'm going to kind of work from the bottom up and work out where the bottom part of it would be and then move up from there. So do you like my hugely accurate drawing of an engine? So what I've basically done is I've used 20mm rails alongside the engine to see the closest I could mount it, which is this 360, and then I measured this overhang and that overhang and basically the width of the engine. So the next thing I'm going to do with the engine is try and, as sort of best I can, is try and sort of mark the middle, and then see if I put the middle on the middle datum line and kind of see where we are there. So down this side of the engine with the cylinder head and this sort of mounting area here for the gearbox, I do actually have a reasonably clean line. So what I've done, and I can't kind of show you because I can't do it with one hand because everything's in the way, is measure across there and measure across here, and I've got it's fairly square there. So what I'm going to do is then mark those measurements so I can have a sort of a line straight down. I guess I'll mark the sump and then stick that mark on my center datum line here. Seems to make logical sense to me. I may try and stick the engine up on a bit of metal as well and see. Actually, the balance point is actually fairly pointless because, like I showed you, that gearbox weighs a bloody ton, so that's going to I kind of think the engine in that position is probably reasonable weight, even weight. But then you stick a sodding great car flywheel on the end and that must be 40-50 kilos. It's going to pull the weight over to this side anyway, which is useful because that's the passenger side, so that might help me with corner weighting and all that sort of stuff. So with a little bit of kind of jiggery pokery, I managed to mark that middle point in a couple of positions, ignore that one, and transpose it down to the sump, and funny enough it puts it pretty well bang in the middle of the sump plug. I suppose that's a reasonable place. So I'm going to just move it across. I'm going to try and now get this in position and then work out basically what I've got to do is I work out the whole suspension geometry kind of stuff is worked out from, if I can set one point, and obviously I want this to be as narrow as possible, as discussed before, long wishbones and all that. I can then design the top but double checking that the top is then wide enough for my engine mounts and to clear the engine and all that sort of stuff. I think what I need to do is just screw on that gearbox just loosely so I can make sure I know where I am with that area there and how much room I've got to play with. Well, bolting that gearbox on certainly answers a few questions, doesn't it? You know, the choice for the upper part of the cradle is either wide at it and low or above it. Well, you see the width, it'd actually be, it's just so wide. Obviously the cradle's got to come above. So what I need to make sure with my suspension calculations is I need to have a mount that's above, so it needs to be minimum height to there. But obviously also I need to make sure I have enough clearance so the suspension doesn't foul the gearbox, which would obviously be a fair old cock up. You can see how the whole engine's also leant over now, where that's put so much weight on that one side. What it is making me realise is as much as I'm saying about making it easy taking this engine in and out, I think one of the things for sure is I'm going to end up having to remove the gearbox, or basically drop the engine in and then put the gearbox on the engine. I don't think it's going to be possible to have any kind of cradle wide enough to be able to lift the entire lot out in a oneer without taking the gearbox off. Or I really think having the engine central and actually shift the engine slightly over, because obviously we've got bags of room this side and it's quite tight that side now with the gearbox on. The drive shafts are uneven length anyway, because they come out of the diff here and here. So on the normal car, I think they probably use these mounts here as like a straight drive shaft and then a CV joint kind of here, which obviously I'll be doing the same thing. Yeah, God, it's complicated all this, isn't it? I also noticed with it up here, I've got a hole here. Now I know it's a dry clutch and all that sort of thing, but I assume we don't run with dirt and rubbish getting into the clutch, so I think I might be missing some sort of plate that goes on there. So again, I'm appealing to UK series people or anyone who fancies being really helpful and doing a Google search, just see what's supposed to go on there, because the box of parts I had that I thought was fully comprehensive with this, I don't have any plate that will go on there. Yeah, so if anyone knows, let me know. I'm assuming it's just a cover plate and I'll just be able to bolt on a bit of alley or something, but yeah, if I'm missing something important, let me know. So just thinking about this balance point thing, I lifted the engine up and I put that in fairly well over to the left of the sump and dropped the engine back down so this isn't taking any weight. And clearly, even with it that far over, we've still got more weight that side than the other side. So although I've spoken about the whole balance of the car, obviously my weight sat there is going to be pretty well front and rear, because I'm going to be sat pretty well central. This is going to be very much weight on the rear wheels. I've got a set of old bathroom scales. I try and get those underneath and try and get a feel for how off centre this weight balance is. But what I am thinking is that instead of having it mounted centre of the engine, I will actually mount across that way a bit. So although it will still put more weight on the left, it won't be as extreme as it would be if I went for the centre of the engine. That may also help as well, where this gearbox is sort of hanging so far out to that side. In the true style of use what I've got, I just happen to have left over from the karting days when we used to use cheap scales to corner weight my lad's scales. and this is roughly the same height as that. So I put that as far over on the sump as I can, so we're off of centre point, and not massively out of balance there. I think, I mean, these scales aren't great by any means, but I think we're on 5 kilos ish. So I'm just going to do the same thing with this in the middle. Okay, so we're kind of on the centre, weight's pretty well off. I know it's leaning over, so this is, trouble is I don't have a pole. I think I need a pole that's about 10 mil thinner than that, and I don't have anything to make it square. Anyway, so that's giving me about 40-45 kilos. I'm surprised just that small amount, how much difference it makes. Do the what's it, measure twice, cut once thing. I will redo it, and I'll have a search for a piece of metal. I've actually got 40 mil square, so I think I'll redo it again, but with 40 mil under there. So my mind at the moment is thinking I will probably offset this engine just a little bit. So I'd quite like at least 10 kilos extra this side to help compensate the weight, but 40 odd kilos, that's too much. That's going to be more than a counterbalance to me driving. Messing around with sizes of bars and where I'm putting that on, I've got, it's not spot on horizontal, but it's not a million miles off now. And so with the center, we've got, of course now I can't put my eyes straight down on that, but around about high 60s kilos on that side, which is obviously quite a lot. So I'm going to just try measuring again with that over and see what that gives us. I need to actually do a little bit of measurements, maybe 20 mil across and 40 mil, and see where we are with those. So that's what I've got measuring across. So that's the weight on the gearbox, using those different center points. So it's quite clear. I haven't got to move it many millimeters to make quite a difference. I think what I'll do is do a little bit of fag packet maths on how much weight, when I'm sat there, I'm going to be putting extra on the side, on the rear wheel back here, because my sort of estimate is, it's certainly, I mean, I'm you know, my fat arse is, with all the gear on, I'm probably around 100 kilos in there now. So I would have thought probably offsetting the engine somewhere around this mark, it's probably going to balance up the rear end fairly well. And what it also does as a Brucey bonus is moving the engine across that way very slightly means I've got a bit more room this side to narrow the top mounts, and I've not sort of got a lump of gearbox hanging out the side, which... Okay, so just enjoyed a nice hot bowl of soup and warmed up. I've got all these measurements and info and bits and bobs. Now I'm thinking hopefully that is enough now. I'll go upstairs to the office. I know you all think I just do all this stuff on a fag packet and a piece of old scrap paper. I'll go up there and actually draw these out a bit clearer and get on the pewter, and I'll show you the website I've used for the front suspension, which is really handy. I just thought I'd come back out here now because I suspect there'll be something that I haven't measured that I will need to know, and I thought if I come out it might bite me on the arse, but at the moment my arse is completely unbitten, so it will probably come to me within 2 minutes of sitting down upstairs. Right, so I'm going to get on and do that, and you can come with me and, I wouldn't say learn, because I would be rather up my own arse if I thought I could teach anything about this, but I suppose see what I'm doing. This is the website I've been using for doing the suspension calculations. It's really useful. It's got like a free kind of one you can have a mess around with, and the subscription on it is really cheap as well. It does have some preset parts in there, like the Cortina uprights and various other bits and pieces, but it's fairly easy to use. I've designed the front suspension on here, and I'm about to have a play around with the figures for the rear suspension. Last night I just started thinking about this engine position, and then overnight I suddenly remembered that this Racing Aspirations has a weight distribution calculator. So I'm going to give that a go, because I'm quite sure that's going to be better than using my very rough drawings. So I've used their little calculator thing here. You can put in each component, but all I've done now, because I'm only really interested in like me versus engine, I've just put me in, and it calculates the corner weights. We can see from here it's saying with me in there, I'm putting 33 kilos on one side and 20 kilos on the other. So what that's telling me is, from the details I had yesterday with the engine offset, is I want, where are we, just round that to, so we're 19, so we're about 12 kilos over, so I want to shift about 12 kilos onto that rear wheel, which means I offset that engine by about, it's going to be about 50 mil probably, and that should then, with me in there and the engine in there, give me perfect balance across the back, which doesn't seem a bad thing, does it? Now I guess just because, you know, I will have people in the car sometimes, it might be wise to have it so as it's slightly heavier this side than that side. But again, you know, with any of these things, obviously when we're talking about a few kilos, by the time we put fuel tanks in and seats, you know, and batteries and all those other things, obviously this is, you know, just using the engine and myself, there's so many more things that are going to cause that to change. Even the exhaust, to be honest. I mean, the exhaust is going to weigh quite a bit. Anyway, I think this is going to be quite useful just to give me that guide as to how many millimeters to offset the engine. Okay, so I've spent a whole bunch of time revising and messing with the rear suspension layout. Basically, what I've tried doing, and it might be completely wrong, is, so that's the front suspension, and that's the, if you like, the camber change and all that. So it seems to me sensible to try and make it so as it does much the same thing. So the same amount of body roll gives me the same amount of camber. So I played around and got it as close as I possibly can. Obviously I can't be exactly the same, because this rear thing has to be much wider to get around the engine than the front does, because I mean, front doesn't need to get around anything, does it? And that's where I've ended up, and a lot of the blurb talks about the roll center thing being important as well. So the roll center thing is nowhere near as good, but it's about as good as I can get it. I haven't got it completely clear in my mind quite what roll center thing does. I guess I'll find out if I got it completely wrong. So those are the dimensions I'm going to aim for. So now I'm going to do some drawings so I can design these, because this end is going to have to be very wide to get around the gearbox. I'm going to call it an end to that video. So catch you all later. Bye.